Third, the U.S. military showcasing precision and power in the Middle East is taking action against Iranian Navy ships in the Strait of Hormuz in order to keep those shipping lanes open for oil and other cargo. As we get a new update from CENTCOM on Operation Epic Fury. Good morning, I'm Dana Perino. Bill Hemmer is off today. Hello, great to have you again.
Good morning and good to be with you once again.
Thank you.
I'm Bill Malugin. This is America's Newsroom.
Breaking news, the United States military has just delivered its most comprehensive update yet on Operation Epic Fury. And the numbers are staggering. More than 5,500 targets struck inside Iran. 60 Iranian ships destroyed using precision weapons in a single day. An entire class of Iranian warships taken completely out of the fight. And 16 Iranian mine-laying vessels obliterated in the Strait of Hormuz after President Trump warned the regime that planting mines there would trigger military consequences unlike anything ever seen before. This is not a limited operation. This is not a warning shot. This is the systematic, methodical, deliberate dismantling of one of the most dangerous military forces in the Middle East, carried out with a precision and a pace that has left Iran's armed forces reeling on every front simultaneously. Meanwhile, Iranian drones struck outside Dubai's international airport. Sirens are sounding again over Tel Aviv. Funerals for Iranian commanders are being held in the streets of Tehran, and a senior U.S. senator is warning that Russia and China may be actively assisting Iran, providing intelligence and targeting details to a regime under siege from American bombers. The war is escalating, the stakes are rising, and tonight we have the full picture. I'm Hannah Blake. This is Global News Diary. Let's get into it. U.S. Central Command held a briefing that redefines the scope of this operation. More than 5,500 targets struck inside Iran, 60 Iranian ships destroyed using precision weapons in a single operational day. Strike waves launched simultaneously from multiple locations and directions, unpredictable, dynamic, and decisive in CENTCOM's own words. And the last of 4 Iranian warships belonging to an entire class of surface combatants taken out. That class of ship is now completely gone from the battlefield. CENTCOM showed the world the before and after imagery, and the contrast is total. A peer photograph before the operation began, an Iranian warship, a large drone smuggling vessel, and 4 surface combatants docked and ready. The same peer 4 days later, every single ship taken out of action. 1 warship hit and rolled onto its side. 2 ships near the Strait of Hormuz shown burning after a single precision strike. This is what American military dominance looks like when fully applied. CENTCOM also made clear the strategic vision extends beyond today's battlefield. American bombers struck a large ballistic missile manufacturing facility, not just to destroy existing weapons, but to eliminate Iran's ability to build more in the future. The goal is not to win this battle. The goal is to end this threat permanently. Iran made its most dangerous strategic move of this entire war, and the United States neutralized it before it could fully develop. Iran had begun laying sea mines in the Strait of Hormuz. According to the Wall Street Journal, 10 mines had already been deployed in the narrow waterway that sits between Iran and Oman, a corridor just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, through which approximately 20% of the world's oil supply passes every single day. This was not a military maneuver. This was economic warfare, a direct attempt to close the world's most critical energy choke point, spike global oil prices, and hold the economies of dozens of nations hostage in order to force diplomatic intervention that would stop the military campaign against the Iranian regime. President Trump responded with a public warning on Truth Social that left no room for ambiguity. If mines are placed in the Strait of Hormuz and are not immediately removed, the military consequences for Iran will be at a level never seen before. And if Iran chooses to remove what has already been placed, that will be considered a step in the right direction. The military action followed immediately. U.S. Central Command struck and destroyed 16 Iranian mine-laying vessels on March 10th, eliminating the platforms being used to deploy the mines before the campaign could accelerate. 16 ships gone. The broader picture of Iran's attempt to weaponize the strait is even more alarming. Iran has effectively been trying to close commercial traffic through the waterway entirely. That effort, combined with Iranian attacks on oil infrastructure across the region, has already pushed global oil prices higher. The International Energy Agency has been asked to consider releasing reserves to take pressure off global markets. The question of whether the United States will tap its own strategic petroleum reserve remains unresolved. Senator Tom Cotton, chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, addressed the Strait of Hormuz threat directly and without diplomatic softening. President Trump has made clear, Cotton said, that the United States will not allow a radical revolutionary regime in Iran to put a chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most strategic and vital waterways. That, according to Cotton, is one of the primary reasons this campaign had to be launched in the first place. The strait is open, the mine layers are destroyed, and the message from Washington to Tehran could not be clearer. In a dramatic expansion of the conflict, Iran launched drone attacks against U.S. allies in the Persian Gulf, 2 Iranian drones striking outside Dubai's international airport, with additional attacks targeting Qatar. Dubai International is one of the busiest airports in the world. Striking near that facility is not an accident. It is a deliberate signal that Tehran is willing to expand the conflict beyond Israel and U.S. military targets, threatening the economic infrastructure of Gulf states that have aligned themselves with the American-led campaign. Qatar hosts the largest U.S. military airbase in the Middle East. Any Iranian attack on Qatari territory carries direct implications for the safety of American forces stationed there. These attacks reflect what analysts describe as Iran's strategy of firing in every direction simultaneously, trying to drag enough countries into the conflict to generate international pressure for a ceasefire. The calculation in Tehran appears to be that Gulf leaders will call Washington and plead for peace. According to Senator Cotton, that calculation is backfiring. Instead of calls for peace from Arab leaders, the United States has been receiving something else entirely, requests for targeting coordinates. The Gulf states are not asking for this war to stop. They are asking how to help finish it. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the progress of the joint campaign with the United States in terms that left no ambiguity about Israel's commitment or its objectives. Netanyahu described the conflict as a campaign against what he called a cruel enemy, one that has made the elimination of Israel its stated purpose for over 4 decades. He pointed to Operation Rising Lion, the earlier Israeli campaign that crushed Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile capabilities, and noted that rather than learning from that defeat, Iran chose to rebuild, attempting to redevelop its missile program and bury the new systems deep underground in hardened facilities designed to survive future airstrikes. That choice, Netanyahu suggested, is why this broader campaign became necessary. Iran was given the opportunity to step back from the edge. It chose instead to dig deeper. On the northern front, Israel is intensifying pressure on Hezbollah. Intense airstrikes hit southern Beirut overnight, targeting Hezbollah positions and launch infrastructure across the area. And in a move that signals the potential for a significant escalation of ground operations, Israel moved a key military brigade from inside Gaza to its northern border, repositioning forces in preparation for offensive action against Hezbollah in Lebanon. This is not a defensive posture. Moving a combat brigade from one active theater to another is a preparation for attack. Israel is signaling that if Hezbollah continues its rocket and missile fire into Israeli territory, the response will not be limited to airstrikes. Ground forces are now in position. Sirens continued overnight in Tel Aviv, sending hundreds of thousands of civilians into bomb shelters. Missile interceptions were observed throughout the day, and in the streets of Tehran, a scene that speaks more powerfully than any military briefing, funerals being held for Iranian commanders. Senior military leadership killed by American and Israeli strikes being mourned in public processions. The people filling those streets, reporters noted, are supporters of the regime. The Iranians who oppose it, the majority, according to every available indicator, remain too afraid to enter the streets of their own country. Senator Tom Cotton, chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, offered one of the most substantive assessments of this conflict from inside the U.S. government and pushed back hard on colleagues who have been painting a very different picture. Some senators have emerged from classified briefings claiming there is no strategy and no coherent plan. Cotton, who sits in the same briefings, was direct. The campaign is successful. Iranian ballistic missile fire has fallen by almost 90% from the opening days of the war. The objectives are clearly defined: destroy Iran's missile and drone arsenal, eliminate their manufacturing capacity, permanently deny Iran nuclear weapons, keep the Strait of Hormuz open, and end Iranian support for terrorism. Cotton acknowledged tough days may still lie ahead. He acknowledged that intelligence agencies cannot yet say with precision exactly how many launchers or missiles Iran has left, but he was unsparing about the senators publicly describing doom and gloom after classified sessions, suggesting those characterizations do not reflect what the briefers are actually saying and that the political motivation behind them is transparent. The progress is real. The trajectory is clear. And the objectives, Cotton said, are ones the president has been consistent about from the beginning. The most alarming new dimension of this conflict may not be happening on the battlefield in the Middle East at all. It may be happening in Moscow and Beijing. Senator Richard Blumenthal, speaking after emerging from a classified briefing, raised what he described as a deeply disturbing specter: active Russian assistance to Iran. Blumenthal said it appears Russia is aiding Iran, providing intelligence and potentially other forms of support in ways that are directly endangering American lives. The suggestion that China may also be assisting Iran was also raised in the same context. These are extraordinary allegations. Russia providing intelligence and targeting details to a nation that American forces are actively striking is not a minor diplomatic problem. It is a direct escalation by a nuclear-armed power into a conflict where U.S. service members are dying. Senator Cotton, when asked about these intelligence reports, was careful but clear. He could not confirm or deny specific intelligence about Russian or Chinese assistance. But he noted that this is exactly the kind of thing those countries would do, and that Soviet Russia had done precisely this throughout the Cold War. Putin's Russia, he said, is no different. Cotton then delivered a pointed message. Given what President Trump has been saying and posting publicly, this is probably not a good time for another country to mess around with the United States. Senior officials, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe, have been conveying the same message to their Russian and Chinese counterparts directly. The bottom line, in Cotton's words, Russia and China, if they are providing any assistance to Iran, are playing with fire. President Trump spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin in a call whose full contents have not been disclosed. The fact of that call, a direct conversation between the leaders of the two largest nuclear arsenals in the world, in the middle of an active American military campaign against a Russian-aligned state, is itself a signal of how high the stakes of this conflict have risen. As global oil prices rise in response to the Strait of Hormuz disruption, a domestic policy problem has moved to center stage. The U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, created after the 1970s oil shock to protect America from exactly this kind of energy crisis, is not at full capacity. Senator Cotton pointed directly to Biden-era decisions that drew down the reserve to address rising gas prices in 2021 and 2022, a purpose it was never designed for. The reserve was built for national security emergencies, not political ones. The consequences are now visible in real time. With Iranian oil off the global market and the strait partially disrupted, the buffer that reserve was meant to provide is smaller than it should be. Whether the Trump administration will tap it remains unresolved. The International Energy Agency has been asked to consider releasing member nation reserves to ease pressure on global markets. The mechanisms for managing the disruption are in motion, but the underlying vulnerability, American energy security weakened by decisions made years ago in a completely different context, is now a factor in an active war. Here is today's question, and it is one with genuine strategic weight. CENTCOM has struck over 5,500 targets, destroyed Iran's entire naval surface fleet, and eliminated the mine-laying threat in the Strait of Hormuz. Russia and China may be providing intelligence to Iran. Does that change how you see this war ending? And do you think the United States should respond directly if Russian or Chinese involvement is confirmed? Drop your answer in the comments. This community brings some of the sharpest geopolitical analysis anywhere on this platform. The most insightful responses get featured in our next video. If this video gave you the full picture that most coverage is missing, hit the like button right now, 2 seconds. That is all it takes to help this channel reach people who are trying to understand what is actually happening. Subscribe if you are not already here. We are covering every major development in this conflict, every CENTCOM briefing, every political development, every strategic escalation with the depth and context that the story deserves. Turn on notifications. This war is moving fast. You do not want to be behind when the next major development breaks. Share this video, send it to someone who deserves the full picture, put it in your group chat, post it. This is the breakdown they need. I'm Hannah Blake. This is Global News Diary. We will be back the moment this story develops further. Stay sharp, stay informed.